Hi, Gina. I just made you a co-host as well for this. So once I was just saying we're about 2 minutes away. I'll just go. I have a little opening comments to make here, just generally about the event, and then I will stop sharing, and you guys are free to take it away at that point. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. It's 12:30. I hope everybody enjoyed their lunch, and lots of great stuff going on today. Lots of great content coming out to everyone. Still moving forward here. So thanks again to everyone for attending today's New York City Department of Education's Beyond Access Forum. This event is brought to you by the DOE Division of Specialized Instruction and Student Support and the Office of Digital Inclusion and the New York City School Library System. A special thank you to all our partners. Be sure to visit their booths throughout the day. I'd also like to take a moment to remind everyone to log into the Conference Hub using the link sent in your confirmation email. Once you're logged on, you can visit a partner booth to learn about their offerings and book a meeting or chat live with them. You can also network with all the other attendees today via the registrant directory and chat features. You can gain access to all the conference resources in the resource section. You can also enter our Passport to Prizes, which throughout the Conference Hub, you will find several buttons to enter yourself into our Passport to Prizes. Each time you find a button and fill in the form, you will earn one entry into the raffle. All entries are eligible for a series of prize drawings, only one prize per participant. We will announce the winners via email at the end of the conference. Before we begin, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes here. If you have any questions for the presenters during the sessions, please submit them through the Zoom chat feature. You have the option to turn on closed captioning by clicking Show Subtitle within your Zoom console. Be sure to use the conference hashtag NYC Schools Inclusion in any of your social media posts. And for CTLE credit, please click on the link that I will put in the chat at the end of this presentation. Without any further ado, let me kick this over to Gina and Terrie.
Thanks so much, Ray. Thanks for having us, everybody. We've got an awesome group this afternoon, and I am Terrie Noland. I'll be leading our session this afternoon, and I've been working with Learning Ally for a long time, but more importantly than that, I've really grown myself over the past several years, working towards understanding struggling readers and throwing myself into the research and the work around struggling readers and what they need. Currently working on a PhD out of St. John's University there in New York, but my accent places me down south in Texas. So doing all that online. I'll be leading us through our interaction this afternoon, but I want to introduce Gina. So Gina, come off and say hello.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As you can tell by my accent, I am a New Yorker. I'm here in New York. I'm a product of New York City Public Schools, and I'm thrilled that you all joined us. Learning Ally is a nonprofit, and we focus on helping students who struggle with reading. So that's our mission, and Terrie's going to lead the workshop. But please know that you can come visit me in our booth afterwards, ask any questions. I'm going to put my email in the chat. And I'm here in New York. I wish I could come meet each of you and see you, but we can't this year. And hopefully by next year we can. And I see somebody's from the Bronx. My mom was from the Bronx. Really great to be here with everybody today, and thank you. So I'm going to hand it over to Terrie now.
Thanks, Gina. And Gina will be in that chat as well, making sure that's all moving along in the right way. Guys, I'm going to tell you what, we have a crisis at hand, and that crisis is this great reading divide that we know every single year that comes out with those NAEP scores. We are faced with it every single year, and I am telling you, my mission, the mission of not only our organization, but so many of you, we are here to smash that reading divide. Absolutely smash that reading divide and provide the immediate access to grade level content that our struggling readers need, as well as all of the interventions and supports. I love what's happening across the country right now with this swell of information around the science of reading. It just makes my heart happy that we've got so many people invested in creating this awareness around what it means to effectively get at what students need when it comes to reading. And that's the only way we're going to smash that reading divide. Today, we're going to be talking about giving these struggling readers that immediate access to grade level content. So I've got a question for everybody in the chat. Tell me in the chat, what is the one book throughout the course of your life that just grabbed your heart, that kind of wrecked you emotionally, and that you would read again and again and again? Type the name of that book into the chat box. Bridge to Terabithia. Absolutely. Either one, a children's book or adult book, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Great Expectations, Tuck Everlasting Nightingale. I love this question too, because you get a lot of book recommendations. Oh, I Will Love You Forever. Everybody should have that on their bookshelf if you are a parent. Absolutely. Lion Witch in the Wardrobe. Team of Rivals, that's a new one for me. Call of the Wild. Oh, The Places You'll Go. Absolutely. You know what? Here's the thing about books like this. The thing about books like this is our struggling readers aren't being exposed to books like this. Our struggling readers don't see themselves as readers. They don't understand the importance of reading. They don't know what it means to have purpose for reading, and that reading is the foundation of learning. And we don't want to deprive any student of having that emotional connection that you're talking about right here with these books. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I want us to hang on to that thought as we think about giving our students grade level access to content. And they're still coming in, I'm telling you, keep them coming in. All right, so you are here. If you're hopefully in the right session, we are immediately creating that inclusive learning for struggling readers. So we want them to comprehend and participate at grade level. And what we want to do is 3 things this afternoon. Understand struggling readers and that neurodiversity, the plasticity of the brain. We want to understand how to build knowledge about the types of text and when each type of text is appropriate. Now, this is a big one, and it's one that I kind of get fired up around because every text has its purpose, and every reader has a text that they can love and get fired up around. And then finally, identifying those resources, and I'll be kind of throwing those in all along the way here. All right, so you know, we all understand, I think, that reading is a very, very complex, complicated process. We can't just think of reading as, you know, this singular facet. It has so many constructs, it has so many dimensions to reading. And one of the best ways that I can think about it, when you get to the pinnacle, the ultimate of what reading is supposed to produce, it's supposed to produce that comprehension, that cognitive processing for thinking. It's because you've mastered the lower level processes.
Can you make the presentation bigger so we can see it? Because we see your desktop.
Oh, I am so sorry. Thank you so much for pointing that out to me. Let me do a reshare and make sure we are getting it. There we go. How about that? Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Regina, thank you so much for stopping me and pointing that out. So we've got the lower level processes that are needed for reading. That's your decoding, that's your fluency, that's your all of the requisite skills in those areas of phonemic awareness, of phonological awareness, of phonics, all of the building blocks that you become an accurate word decoder. But being an accurate word decoder doesn't mean anything unless you can have those higher level processes coming together for that cognitive comprehension and constructing meaning. That's what reading is all about. And you've got to have all of these things come together. If you really drill down into all of the requisite components needed, there's a lot. Many of us know the Reading Rope by Hollis Scarborough and all of the strands that weave together to make someone a reader. But we've got a problem at hand. And that problem at hand is that we've got so many students that aren't meeting the you know, proficiency levels needed at their grade level to be an accurate reader. And that in part could be due to some type of, you know, reading deficit. And here we're looking at some images of the brain here. And I want us to think about cognitive load and what that means for reading. So on the very left-hand side, we've got that reading brain, and reading really takes place in the left hemisphere of the brain. That's where it starts out. It's where it's supposed to start out, in the left hemisphere of the brain, crossing that corpus callosum and then igniting that right side of the brain in order to get to this comprehension and cognitive processing. But for a struggling reader, they don't have the neural networks developed in their brain in order to effectively automatize the processes of phonemic awareness, of phonological awareness, understanding the blending of our sounds together to create words and speak words. You know, so our typical readers, you see that brain there in the center, that's where the lighting up happens. Over on the right-hand side, this is the brain of a student with dyslexia. It's not lighting up in the way that a typical reader is lighting up. And we've got to create those neural networks. We have to create those pathways. And here is the good news, is it can be done. Sometimes, and we got to dismiss this myth that a struggling reader doesn't have the cognitive ability to be able to produce content like a typical reader. We got to get rid of that myth, because they absolutely do. We just got to unlock their potential by giving them the right code, building up those neural networks in that brain in order to create that active working brain. So there are, let's kind of classify our struggling readers here as we begin to understand them. And I love this little 2x2 here. And this is from David Kilpatrick and Margie Gillis, who are big researchers in the area of dyslexia in particular. But what they point out here is that we've got this 2x2 square. And across the top, we've got language comprehension. Down on the left-hand side, we've got word reading. That's that decoding of words. So if I'm strong in both, in the top left-hand side, you'll see that green box. That's your typical readers. And Nancy Young, she's a researcher that says that 5% of our population of students are our typical readers. Now, did you hear that? Only 5% are our typical readers, right? That's not a very large percentage. So if you look down below, you've got strong language, but weak word reading or weak decoding. Those students are our students with dyslexia, and that's due to phonological, the sounds of our language, and their brains need to be trained in order to process that language. Over on the right-hand side, if you're weak in language, but strong in decoding, then that's called hyperlexia. And that's where you've got the comprehension deficit. I'm telling you, so many of you on this call today are probably like, yes, I know these kids. These are the kids that read and they say those words accurately, but when they're done, you ask them about what they've read and they're like, I don't know what any of that was about. They're struggling in that language component. Doesn't mean that they're not cognitively able. It means that we have to strengthen the networks in the brain. And then finally, you've got weak language, weak word, and this is our mixed reading abilities, mixed reading difficulties down there in that bottom right-hand side. So I love thinking about our struggling readers in this kind of 2x2. And I do want to have a disclaimer here. I'm not talking about the students that we know that are cognitively impacted. Jan Hasbrook, Dr. Jan Hasbrook, she's a big researcher in the area of fluency. She says that 95% of our students are able to learn how to read. We just got to give them the right instruction. So I'm not talking about the 5% that do have cognitive impacts, cognitive delays. What we're focusing on are those students that we need to build up those brain muscles, as I call them, in order to access print. All right, so let's look here at a student. And as I talk about Brooklyn, I want you to think about students you know. Brooklyn, she is in 7th grade. She's 12 years old. She decodes on a 4th grade level. You've got students like this. Maybe you've got 9th graders decoding 2nd grade. Maybe you've got 4th graders decoding on a 1st grade. You know, we see this huge discrepancy in their abilities. But here's the thing about Brooklyn. Her comprehension is at grade level or above grade level if given accommodations. So once again, that cognitive ability in order to be able to keep up with coursework at grade level. She reads about 80 words per minute, and the grade level expectation for her is about 110, 120 words per minute. Here's a tip, write it down. This comes from Dr. Jan Hasbrook, and I love it. If you want to see what the fluency rate is of a student, here's your tip, is you take their age times 10, and that's how many words they should be reading accurately per minute. So Brooklyn, she's 12 times 10, 110, 120 words per minute, whether it's in the front half of the year, back half of the year, but that's pretty average. And she's reading 80 words per minute. So we see that, she's really struggling there. She has these consistent misreads while she's reading aloud. She's scoring below proficiency on reading assessments. But here's the thing we want to know about Brooklyn. She's Mexican American heritage. She likes cooking. She likes baking. She's a huge movie fan, right? So let's look at what this is all about when we kind of chart this out for Brooklyn. There's this huge achievement gap that starts to happen. Over on the left-hand side, we see her decoding level. Across the bottom, we see her cognitive level. So her cognitive level, she's a 7th grade, but remember I said she could cognitively comprehend content above grade level. So she can, you know, if she's exposed to 9th grade level content, boy, she's on it. She can respond, she can think out loud, she can engage in conversation at a 9th grade level. Typical, but remember, she's decoding around that 3rd, 4th grade range. Now, typical students in 7th grade, they've got this normal kind of trajectory of moving right along, and by the end of the year, now they're 8th grade, they're right on track. But you see what starts to happen is in 7th grade, typical readers are progressing right along, and Brooklyn is coping. Brooklyn, if not given accommodations, if not being provided those interventions, this huge achievement gap that we know that we are faced with right now begins to form. And we don't want that to happen for her or any student like her. All right, we're going to engage in helping us put this into practice. I am going to be putting up a passage on the screen, okay? So I'm going to put it up. I'll be silent. And while I am silent, if you would, just read that to yourselves. You're all on mute. You can read aloud if you want. If you're in a place you could do that, or just do a silent read of the passage. All right, everyone, I am going to stop you right there. As I always say, I'm going to put you out of your misery, okay? So if you would, in the chat box, go ahead and reply to everyone what you think this passage was about. And I see Charity wrote, nice trick. Selling a spell book for wizards. I like that. It's an ad. Oh, good. Good, Miss Beatty. It's an ad. Learning how to do a magic trick. Okay. There you wizardry, a little boy that can do magic. Yeah. Anybody take a guess what book this is from? Yeah. Harry Potter. Here we go. Harry Potter. Yes, yes. Lots of Harry Potters coming through. So this is a passage from Harry Potter. And this was from a 9th grade student, Anthony, that he read this aloud to his mother, this passage from Harry Potter, and she wrote down exactly every word that he did an oral read on. And this is the way that he reads content. Now, let me tell you what, Anthony has severe reading deficits. He struggles with decoding words. And if I'm Anthony, and this is the way that I read content every single day, 5 days a week, I'm not fired up about being in class. I'm not fired up about raising my hand. I'm not fired up about doing my homework. I'm not fired up around being a reader. So you can see how students that struggle with those requisite components of reading appear, like if you heard Anthony read this aloud, you would be like, oh my goodness, what's going on with this kid? And you would think, is there something going on that he cognitively can't get it? That's not it at all. It's just that he's struggling over decoding. Cognitively, I'm going to tell you what, he's right on track. In fact, Anthony could strip down a car motor and rebuild it because he's really got talent in that area. So as we think about our students, just really helping us understand that cognitively they can be right on track with other students. In the world of education, I think that we've thinking about the way that we approach instruction. Sometimes we think that education is all about students are these vessels that need to be filled up with the knowledge, with the content. We've got curriculum, we've got standards, we've got all of these things, we've got assessments, we've got everything that we need to fill them up full of this knowledge. And did you know that one of the roots of education is educo? And educo means to unlock from within. I love that, because education should be with our students unlocking their potential from within. All Anthony needs is the right accommodations and the right interventions to unlock his potential. Same thing for Brooklyn. So this is where I'm going to move into types of text, and offering types of text in the right context, in the right moments for our students can be an absolute way to unlock their potential. So this chart here, and let me tell you what, I love this chart here. And it really helps us to think about the moments in time during our daily instruction when certain types of text should be presented and made available to our students. So if you look up at the top line, predictable text. These are texts that utilize a repeated pattern of some type. Now, the major use, here's what's important, only for providing that practice of skills taught, only for reinforcement of skills. So a predictable text would be brown bear, what did you see? That's repeated throughout that book. Brown bear, and then whatever the next animal is. I hadn't read that book in so long. What did you see? So it's repeated, and it's just repetition. If I'm trying to get my student to read grade level, I don't need to give them a predictable text. The next type of text, controlled high frequency vocabulary text. Now, these types of text are written specifically for beginning reading instruction, using these high frequency words and carefully introduced. So like some of our words that need to be learned, like the words was, W-A-S, was, does not follow any pattern that we know when it comes to decoding. The word of, O-F, doesn't follow any rules that we know around decoding. But these are words, they're connective tissue in our text, and our kids need to know these. So these controlled high frequency vocabulary texts are really good to reinforce those types of words. But once again, this is only for practice here for our kids, okay? This isn't a text that I would provide in giving them access to what we're doing in 8th grade. Okay, decodable text, this is one that many of you, as we get into decodable and leveled, you're more familiar with. Decodable text. These are texts that are written using words that utilize decoding skills that have been taught to students. So consonant, vowel, consonant words, those CVC words. A lot of the, well, not a lot, some of the Dr. Seuss books are these types of books, the cat in the hat, right? Some, they're following this very, very decodable text. I've been taught, I'm seeing it in connected text. These White Shoes, that's another book that follows a pattern. You're seeing these white shoes over and over again. When do I use these? Only for explicit instruction working on decoding. So if I've got Brooklyn, I might take her out into our small group. We've practiced the skills taught needed for decoding, and I'm going to present her even in 8th grade with a decodable text to practice those skills. Okay, but it's in a small group. It's not intended for her to access her grade level text. Leveled text. These are stories, informational text that have been written to control for the vocabulary. Now, here's something I'll say about level text is they're boring, okay? Level texts are boring. They're written in such a way that we're leveling, once again, to reinforce skill. And it should only be used for, guided reading instruction, or pull out a one-on-one with Brooklyn, a small group with Brooklyn, working on the level text, reinforcing skill development. Then we get into authentic literature. And here's what I love about authentic literature. And that list of titles that came rolling in the chat box is that authentic literature is this true, unadulterated, it's not contrived. The author just used their voice in writing authentic literature. And the reason why I should use authentic literature is for creating comprehension, creating engagement, access to the curriculum, word exposure. Dr. Marianne Wolf, who wrote Proust and the Squid, Reader Come Home, she talks about the need for word exposure and the need for deep reading. We've lost our ability to be deep readers, and authentic literature allows us to get there. Okay, so let's see a little bit of this in practice of what this means. So if we've got here, and I want to point out that we don't ever want to confuse the delivery of instruction that I've got on the left-hand side with our instructional goal, okay? We don't want to confuse the two. The delivery of instruction over on the left-hand side. So these are some ways that I can get my students immediately accessing that grade level text. We could do a read aloud, right? The teacher, reads that book aloud to the class and do that. You could do it through shared reading. You could do it through guided reading, book clubs. Now independent reading gets a little bit tough for those kids that can't decode, because if they can't decode, then they're not ever going to get to our instructional goal of comprehension, our instructional goal of using this book as a mentor text or word exposure. Dr. Anita Archer, she talks about there is no comprehension strategy powerful enough to make up for the fact that you can't read the words. So we got to make sure that we are giving our students access to the words if they can't decode them. Okay, so let's continue and kind of see this in practice here. Okay, so here we go. I'm teaching Charlotte's Web. I think I saw a Charlotte's Web come through in a book that wrecked you. So I'm teaching Charlotte's Web. And let's say I'm using this as an anchor text in my ELA curriculum. And my instructional goal with this book is we're building comprehension. We're building that cognitive processing. I'm working on vocabulary development, teaching new vocabulary words. And I'm also going to use this book as a mentor text for helping my students in writing conversation. There's lots of conversation that happens between Wilbur and Charlotte in this book. So it's going to be a mentor text to help model what writing, conversational writing looks like. So if this is my goal with this book, I know what so many teachers are doing out there. And here's what that might look like here. You could have a do nothing approach. And it's not because you didn't try. It's because you're like, oh my goodness, I'm teaching Charlotte's Web, but I've got all of these kids that are struggling readers that can't decode the words. They're in those other 3 boxes that we looked at, but I'm not sure what to do. And there's this kind of do nothing approach. And that's when these kids get left behind. They can't raise their hands in the groups. They can't get involved in the class. They can't do their homework. They can't write the essay. Okay, so that's one approach. A second approach is to say, oh, I've got an idea. Let me find another text that is leveled. It's kind of about the same thing but it's on their reading level, their decoding level. So in this case, it might be the book A Piglet Named Mercy by Kate DiCamillo. She wrote the foreword to Charlotte's Web. There's some connection there. So, but for Brooklyn, what does this do for her? Makes her shoulders sag. She's embarrassed. She's not going to pull this book out. She's not, we've kind of lowered the expectation for her. So a third thing we could do is do the read aloud that I mentioned before. You, the teacher, the instructors doing the read aloud for the entire group. Brooklyn's involved, Brooklyn's engaged. And so every struggling reader is getting access to the content. But hey, I'm realistic. You as an educator, you cannot always be there to do a read aloud for your kids. It's just not possible. So what's another way? That's where audiobooks can come in. An audiobook can come in and allow Brooklyn to do that independent read. She's not having to decode, but her brain, her cognitive energy is released to be able to work on comprehension. Same thing when we think about, I saw somebody in the chat put To Kill a Mockingbird. So we've got high schoolers. We've got high school kids, 9th, 10th, 11th graders that are decoding on elementary grade levels. And let's say I'm instructing with To Kill a Mockingbird, and we're going to be working on literary devices. We're also going to be using To Kill a Mockingbird as a mentor text for syntax and sentence structure. But once again, I could do the do nothing approach, or there are times when you've got books out there like To Kill a Mockingbird that brings the content down to a decoding level. And but here's what happens. If you can see this right here, the rigor of content is just so diminished in that leveled version of To Kill a Mockingbird. It doesn't even rival, it doesn't even compare to what Harper Lee was trying to get at in the context of To Kill a Mockingbird. So we don't want to do that. Self-esteem, social emotional development and learning for our struggling readers. We can do a read aloud. This isn't, I'm not throwing any kind of new things at you here, other than the fact of reading aloud does allow our kids access to that grade level work. So our Anthonys of the world, Anthony now can access that curriculum, that content at grade level, and it is immediate because I've lifted the processes needing for that decoding. And I mentioned students that can decode but struggle with comprehension. In your read alouds, here's another tip for you. You can chunk the text, read a paragraph. Okay, class, let's open up for discussion. You could even, read a sentence and dig in on a particular sentence and have that discussion, or go ahead and pull through that activity. And then obviously, another alternative here is access to that audiobook. Once again, I don't always have time to do a read aloud. I need to be able to multiply my ability to reach kids. I also know many parents are spending their evenings, their time, especially now that we're in remote and virtual learning. We've got many parents that are doing the read aloud for our students. And that's awesome. That's great. My son even remembers when I read Where the Red Fern Grows aloud to him. He remembers that special time. But when we're talking about struggling readers, oftentimes their families are struggling readers as well. So, maybe the reading aloud in the home's not working in that sense either. Okay, so got a little quiz for you. On the left-hand side, that picture, I can tell that's the Mona Lisa. It's kind of blurry. It's not in focus. The one on the right-hand side, that's a lot sharper and crisper and clearer. And so the reason why I point this out to you right now is when we're giving students immediate access to grade level content, Brooklyn in 7th grade, when we are giving her access to the books that we need in order to fulfill the requirements of the curriculum, meet those standards, is that even as a teacher reads aloud, I've heard teachers say this, whoo boy, if I've got a bunch of classes back to back, my voice even gets tired, right? My voice gets tired, and you may not have the stamina in your own voice to be able to continue to carry through. That's the kind of fuzzy picture on the left-hand side, or that is a synthetic voice. There are options to be able to have synthetic voice as far as reading with audiobooks, but it's kind of the blurry image on the left-hand side. I can kind of make it out. Here's the power of the human voice. Dr. Daniel Willingham from the University of Virginia always talks about the power in our human voices. They carry meaning. The highs and lows, the ebb and flow, the prosody, the music of our language, it carries meaning, and the picture comes into such sharp focus. So let's say that you have in the Engage New York curriculum, this is for 7th grade. I just pulled a grade at random, grabbed those ELA standards and pulled one out. We've got module 3 here. So in module 3, one of the standards that we are working on is using evidence to support analysis. And we're going to use Frederick Douglass's narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. And you're going to need to conduct a short response. Hey, 7th grade, this is our Brooklyns here. So if she can't decode, if she struggles in one of those areas of reading, she is definitely not going to be able to read narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that particular book. It's a really elevated in its text structure. It's authentic literature. That it's not contrived text. And I just want to show you a sample of that and show you what this would look like for Brooklyn if she had access to audiobooks with that grade level text. So I'm going to just switch my share real quick. All right, so this is Brooklyn's bookshelf. You'll notice that she's got her textbooks, her novels, her literature titles, and even some fun stuff that she wants to read. She wants to read Harry Potter. She wants to read The Dreamer, Tortilla Sun. These are things that, that she wants to read. But I'll go back up here to narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. Thinking about my picture of Mona Lisa, listen as we hear this come into focus with an authentic voice, an authentic reader, and the tone, the texture, the engagement that we get because you've got that human voice.
Chapter 1. I was born in Tuckahoe, near Hillsborough, and about 12 miles from Easton in Talbot County, Maryland. I have no accurate knowledge of my age, never having seen any authentic record containing it. By far, the larger part of the slaves know as little of their ages as horses know of theirs, and it is the wish of most masters, within my knowledge, to keep their slaves thus ignorant. I do not remember to have ever met a slave who could tell his birthday. They seldom come nearer to it than planting time, harvest time, cherry time, springtime, or fall time.
All right, so you got to hear a little bit of, having an authentic voice come and read this book. So what we've done here is we've leveled the playing field for Brooklyn. We've given her immediate access to what every 7th grader is doing. The teacher has now multiplied their ability to reach students like Brooklyn. She can do her independent reading if that's the delivery of instruction that the teacher has chosen. She can also do this in remote learning as well, because I mean, there's two ways. There is two ways to give students access to grade level text. It's by having someone read it aloud for them or with an audiobook. It's as simple as that. There's not some other way out there that gives them that access if they're struggling over any of the processes of decoding. So as we wrap up here, I do want to point out too that here's the thing about student engagement. We found that when students can select their own titles of reading, they're 6 times more likely to read. Because guess what? If we are to always force books on our struggling readers who don't care about reading, aren't interested in reading, don't see themselves as readers, they're not going to read. So 6 times, this is what data shows that Learning Ally has access to, 6 times more likely to read. And I want to end with this. This comes from Nell Duke. She is a reading researcher, and I think what she has to share is so critical and so important. Estimates are that each year children learn on average 3,000 words, only about 300 of which are explicitly taught to them in school. And that's not saying that the teacher didn't do their job. That's saying that you don't have time to explicitly teach all the words. We just don't have time. Right? And so I've got to give my students access to words, access to that authentic literature in a different way. Gradual learning of increasingly complex syntactic structures occurs less through direct instruction than through exposure to adult discourse and the language of books. If Brooklyn can read Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, she can go in and have that adult discourse in her classroom that she has been removed from for so long. So we want to make sure that we are engaging these students, getting them to deep reading. And I love to talk about the shark. You put a shark in a tiny aquarium, it's only going to grow to be the size of the aquarium. That's a small world and small learning. If you put a shark in an ocean, that's big world, big learning, and that shark is going to grow to the size of its environment. Same thing with our kids, the cognitive workings of the brain. Guys, I'm going to tell you what, we ended right on time, and I thank you so much for being here, for sticking with us today. I'm telling you what, when I prepare for a presentation, I think about every single one of you. I don't know your names. I can't see many of you, but I'm going to tell you what, you've been in my thoughts in preparation here. And Gina, I'm going to have you come back on because I've got your name up on the slide. And if anybody wants to reach out, you're their gal.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending. Thank you so much for your attention and your enthusiasm. We're really passionate about helping kids. And thank you for all these notes. Please email me. I can give you my phone number, text me. I would love to hear from you and visit our booth. And last but not least, we're having a conference in December on the 4th of December. And you each get a nice discount on your admission to it because you attended this session. So thank you so much. We look forward to working with you and partnering with you and helping your students.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have an amazing
Thank you.
afternoon.